Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer returned to the Senate floor Tuesday to list recent accomplishments from Congress. The New York Democrat listed off the Inflation Reduction Act, the CHIPS and Science Act, and the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act. Schumer said, quote, "For anyone who thought Washington was broken and couldn't do big things, this Democratic majority has shown that real change is possible." Democratic lawmakers have been touting their legislative victories as midterms approach in November.
Mr. President, and I'd like to welcome you and all of my colleagues back from the August work period. I hope everyone had the chance to travel across their states, meet with their constituents, listen to their concerns, and share all the major accomplishments the Senate secured over the last few months. Indeed, the Senate gavels back into session after a season of immense productivity. When Democrats assumed the majority in 2021, I promised we would leave no stone unturned in tackling the biggest challenges facing our country. 20 months later, Democrats have delivered on our promises. We promised to lower costs for the American people in the wake of crippling inflation. So we passed the Inflation Reduction Act to reduce energy costs, reduce health care costs, expand tax breaks for working and middle Americans. We also promised to take on big pharma and lower prescription drug costs. So we passed historic legislation to lower insulin costs for seniors on Medicare, cap out-of-pocket expenses, and empowered Medicare to finally be able to negotiate drug prices. This for the first time ever, long sought after by many Congresses, accomplished by this one. We promised to take on entrenched oil interests and get tough on climate change. And so we passed the largest clean energy package ever, by a long margin, by the way. Thanks to our work, Americans will see their energy bills go down, their savings go up, all while we created millions of new, good-paying jobs and finally dealt with climate change in a very significant and real way. We also promised to bring manufacturing jobs back to America and get tough on adversaries like the Chinese Communist Party. So we passed the CHIPS and Science Act, the largest investment in manufacturing jobs and science research since the aftermath of World War II. And of course, we promised to take on the NRA, as you well know, Mr. President, and protect our kids from gun violence. So we passed the first gun safety bill since the Brady Law 30 years ago, which I was proud to author when I was a member of Congress. Now, none of these accomplishments were easy. They demanded immense patience and persistence above all. But for anyone who thought Washington was broken and couldn't do big things, this Democratic majority has shown that real change is possible. And the results speak for themselves. Jobs across the country remain up. Americans are going back to work. Our supply chains are healing. In fact, freight rates on ocean trade channels have dropped by 60% since January. And as gas prices continue their 2-month drop, we're seeing evidence that inflation might be starting to ease up. Of course, the work isn't done. As we begin this short work period, we have several high-priority items that demand our immediate attention. Before this work period concludes, the Senate must come together to pass a continuing resolution to extend government funding beyond the September 30th deadline. Last week, the administration sent us a request for a number of funding items they'd like us to work on, from aid to Ukraine, pandemic relief, and other items. This process, of course, needs to be bipartisan. Democrats are going to work in good faith to avoid even a hint of a shutdown, and it is my expectation that our Republican colleagues will do the same. We'll also work this month to confirm even more of President Biden's judicial nominees. Later today, the Senate is scheduled to vote to advance the nomination of Judge John Lee to serve as Circuit Court Judge for the 7th Circuit. If confirmed, Judge Lee would make history as the first Asian American judge to sit on the 7th Circuit, joining the proud company of other Biden nominees who are making our courts fairer and more representative of our great country. A graduate of Harvard and Harvard Law School, Judge Lee was unanimously confirmed by this chamber a decade ago to serve as a district judge. In his time on the bench, he's proven himself to be impartial, fair-minded, and committed to the rule of law. Judge Lee will be the first of many judicial nominees that we will advance this month and beyond, because now more than ever, the Senate must make judicial confirmations a top priority. We have a lot of work to do in the Senate to keep improving the lives of the American people. So in the coming weeks, let us continue with the same vigor, the same determination, the same persistence that has made this one of the most productive Senate sessions the Senate has seen in a long, long time. Finally, I want to say a few words on another monumental development that happened over the August recess: student debt cancellation. For the past 2 years, I've repeatedly stated that with a simple flick of a pen, President Biden could lower costs for millions of Americans by canceling their student debt. Everywhere I go, student debt is always front of mind for many of my fellow New Yorkers, as it is for millions across the country. There are many who don't have student debt, many. But for those who do, it's deep. This is not just one of 10 issues. This is the issue that really, really bothers them and motivates them. To have to wake up in the middle of the night saying, how am I going to make that $400 payment next month when my salary doesn't stretch that far? What am I going to cut out of my life? Well, with that long-awaited flick of the pen, President Biden gave tens of millions of Americans a new lease on life by canceling significant amounts of student debt. To President Biden, I say thank you. Thank you for listening to our calls. Thank you for taking action. The President's decision will make it easier for millions of Americans to finally pursue their own American dream, whether that means making that down payment on a house or buying that new car, opening a business, or saving for retirement. It'll help close the racial wealth gap that still holds far too many Americans back. And most of all, it's going to make our economy stronger. Now, over the past few weeks, we've heard a lot of fake outrage from Republicans, saying that canceling student debt is nothing more than a giveaway to wealthy Americans. The same Republicans who made tax cuts for the ultra-rich their #1 priority are suddenly apoplectic at the thought of helping working and middle-class Americans with student debt relief. Well, here's the truth, I say to my Republican colleagues. Among borrowers who are no longer in school, 90% of the debt canceled will go to those earning less than $75,000 a year. The opposite of the tax cuts that Republicans pushed for, where the vast majority of money went to the top 1% and the top 10%. So let me repeat that. Among borrowers who are no longer in school, nearly 90% of the debt being canceled will go to those earning less than $75,000 a year. And let's not forget, a majority of student loans are held by people whose family have zero net worth. Zero. A majority of student loans to families who have zero net worth. That's why the greatest help will go to those with the greatest need. Pell Grant recipients, which for the most part come from families making under $60,000 a year, will have up to $20,000 of their debt canceled. So rather than helping the privileged few, canceling student debt is going to lift up Americans from all walks of life. Students of color, poor Americans, children of immigrants, working and middle-class families struggling to either get to the middle class or stay there. So again, I thank President Biden for taking action. And I also want to thank champions like Senator Warren, who's been such a great partner in this activity, Senator Warnock, Representative Presley, who joined with me in calling for the President to take this step. They have all been great partners in the effort, and I'm glad our efforts finally began to pay off. I yield the floor and note the absence of a quorum.
Clerk will call the roll.
Ms. Baldwin.